Imagine being abandoned as a child, left at the mercy of a cold, unforgiving world, and yet one kind stranger changes your fate forever. 25 years later, a young woman returns, not just to repay the debt of love, but to uncover the secrets that were kept from her since birth. What she finds will challenge everything she thought she knew about her family, her past, and herself. Who is watching her from the shadows? And what truth has been waiting all these years? Stay with us as this journey of survival, love, and destiny unfolds. The alley behind the marketplace was cold that morning, heavy with the scent of smoke and rotting scraps. Stray dogs wandered to the piles of thrown-away memories, searching for anything that could fill their hollow bellies. Among the broken bottles and torn fabric lay a tiny child, no more than 3 years old, her body wrapped in a thin cloth that barely guarded her from the wind. Her breaths were shallow. Her skin was pale. Her eyes were open, yet they saw nothing in the world around her. The townspeople had walked past her. Some had turned their eyes away. Some whispered that destiny had already made its decision. But one person stopped, an old man with hands roughened by decades of labor. A quiet man who lived on the edge of the town, where grass struggled to grow and the sky fell heavier. His name was Samchai. He carried the scent of earth and wood on his clothes, and his footsteps were slow, measured, as if each step counted. When he saw the child, he did not hesitate. He knelt beside her, feeling the fragile life flickering beneath her ribs. He lifted her into his arms with the gentlest care, as though she were made of smoke and could vanish at the wrong touch. He brought her to his small home built of old lumber and patched windows. The house was simple yet warm, filled with hand-carved furniture and the sound of wind threading through bamboo chimes. He named her Molly, like the jasmine flower, fragile at first glance, yet capable of holding a fragrance strong enough to change a room. Molly grew beneath the elders' guidance. She learned to sweep the floor before sunrise. She learned to cook rice without burning it. She learned the names of the plants in the garden and how to mend the tears in old clothing. But more importantly, she learned what kindness felt like. Not the loud kind, spoken in dramatic gestures, but the quiet kind. The kind found in every meal the old man prepared. The kind found in every word he never said, yet always meant. As years passed, their bond deepened. Molly became the reason the old man smiled at the start of each day, and he became the foundation beneath her feet, the place her heart recognized as home. But the world outside did not forget where she came from. Some whispered about the girl from the trash heap. Some looked at her with pity, others with disdain. Yet the old man reminded her with steady eyes that a person's beginning never defined their future. Molly studied diligently. She worked harder than anyone believed possible. Her mind grew sharp. Her spirit grew steady. And her dreams began to take shape. 25 years passed. The girl once left to fade beneath the refuse of others had become a woman of unwavering determination. She stood tall, with graceful posture and eyes bright with purpose. She had become successful, respected, known, but she never forgot the small wooden house with bamboo chimes, nor the old man who had given her a life when the world gave her nothing. On the day she returned, the sky was overcast, and the air held the scent of rain. The path to the house was familiar beneath her feet. Her heart beat fast, heavy with emotion she had carried for years. She reached the gate. She paused, noticing how the garden had grown wild, as though time had moved without waiting for anyone. The windows were still patched. The wind still moved the chimes, but the sound felt different, quieter, more solemn. Molly called softly, but no answer came. She stepped forward. Her hands trembled as she opened the door. Inside, the house felt the same. Yet something was missing. The warmth that had once filled every corner was thinner now, like a candle flickering at its final moment. A quiet realization began to rise in her chest. Her breath tightened. Her eyes searched for a familiar presence. And then, from the inner room, she heard someone move. She turned slowly, her heart bracing for what she might see. The story does not end here. This is where it begins to change, where the past and present finally meet. And what Molly discovers inside that room will alter both her life and is forever. Molly took one slow step toward the room, the floorboards creaking softly under her weight. Her fingers curled slightly at her sides, as though she needed to hold on to something, anything, to remain steady. The air in the house felt different now, heavier, like a place where memories stayed longer than the people who created them. She pushed the thin wooden door inward. The room was dim, lit only by the pale daylight filtering through an uneven curtain. On the small bed, wrapped in a faded woven blanket, the old man rested. His breathing was shallow, each rise and fall gentle but strained, as though his body held on through sheer will. His once strong hands, the same hands that had picked her up from the emptiness of the world, now trembled slightly even in stillness. Molly's chest tightened. The sight of him age was expected, yet no mind is prepared for the moment it must face it. She stepped closer, her voice soft, warm, filled with the echo of years lived under his care. "Father." The old man's eyes opened, slowly at first, as though waking from a dream he had nearly chosen to stay inside forever. When his gaze found hers, something bright flickered in his tired eyes. Recognition. Love that needed no words. His lips curved into a small, gentle smile. "Molly," he said, her name sounding like a prayer he had whispered every day. She knelt beside the bed and took his frail hand between hers. It felt weightless, as though time had thinned him to the edge of being carried away by the slightest wind. "You returned," he said, not as a question, as a certainty he had always believed in, even when others may have doubted. Molly nodded. There were tears, but they did not fall. They lived instead behind her eyes, steady and restrained, because she needed to be strong for him, just as he had been for her. "I came home," she replied. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of everything they had shared, full of everything they had endured, full of 25 years of quiet love. He tried to sit up, but his strength failed him. Molly immediately supported his back with her arm, holding him gently. She could smell the familiar scent of wood smoke on his clothes, the scent of her childhood, the scent of safety. "For so long," the old man whispered, "I wondered whether I had done enough, whether I gave you what you needed." Molly shook her head firmly. "There was never a day you did not give me what I needed." Her voice was steady, but her heart trembled. "You gave me life." The old man's eyes glistened, though no tear fell. He had always been a man who carried his emotions quietly, but she felt them deeply, as if they were her own. Outside, the wind brushed through the bamboo chimes, their soft, fragile sound slipping through the house like a memory returning home. Molly told him about her years away, her work, her success, her struggles and victories, and how every step she took had been guided by the voice he had given her, the voice that said she mattered, the voice that said she could rise, the voice that made her believe she was not a discarded thing, but a person of worth. The old man listened with a quiet pride, his eyes never leaving her face, as though she was the most important sight remaining in his world. When she finished speaking, the old man took a slow breath. "Molly," he said, his voice thin but steady, "there is something I must tell you." Her heartbeat quickened. She leaned closer, waiting. "It is about the day I found you." The room seemed to still. The world outside faded. The bamboo chimes no longer sounded like they belonged to wind, but to fate itself. Molly watched his lips, waiting for the words that had lived behind silence for 25 years. But the old man's breath faltered. His eyes closed for a moment, as if the memory itself carried weight too heavy for his aging body. His hand tightened slightly in hers, fragile yet determined. "Molly," he whispered again, "you were not abandoned by accident." Her eyes widened, a subtle tremor spreading through her chest. But before he could continue, the door to the house opened. Footsteps entered, slow, deliberate, unfamiliar, yet as though they belonged. Molly turned her head. Someone stood in the doorway. Someone who should not have known this place. Someone whose presence changed the air. Someone who held the missing piece of her beginning. And the story paused at that breath, suspended between past and future. As the next truth waited just beyond the moment of being spoken, the figure in the doorway did not move at first. The dim light inside the house revealed only the outline of a person, standing still, as if deciding whether to step forward or disappear back into the world outside. Molly rose slowly from beside the old man. Her hand remained touching his for a moment longer, unwilling to let go, before she gently placed it back over the thin blanket. She stood with a quiet steadiness, though her heart was beating with a force that did not show on her face. The stranger stepped forward, a tall man, dressed in dark, well-kept clothing, not a villager, not someone who belonged to this area of worn wooden houses and dirt pathways. His presence carried the weight of someone who had seen wealth, power, or some form of influence. His eyes lifted to meet Molly's. There was something in his gaze that made time feel slower. Recognition, not the warm kind. Something deeper. Something that had waited silently for years. "I have been searching for you," he said quietly. His voice held no hesitation, no uncertainty, only inevitability. The old man on the bed shifted slightly, his breathing uneven, but his eyes were open again, watching, aware. Molly's jaw tightened, but her expression remained composed. "Who are you?" she asked. The man's gaze did not leave her. He took another step inside, the wooden floor responding under his weight. "My name will mean nothing to you yet," he replied, "but my connection to your life began before you could speak." Molly felt something inside her shift. Not fear, not anger, something else. A long-awaited thread being pulled. The man turned his eyes briefly toward the old man, and in that moment, Molly noticed a flicker of familiarity between them. Not friendship, not kindness, something more complicated, as if two lives had intersected in the shadows of a past that had shaped both of them. "You knew her father," the old man said softly, his voice thin, yet carrying the weight of truth. The stranger's eyes narrowed slightly, as though that single sentence held volumes of history. "Yes," he replied, "and I know what happened the night she was taken." Molly felt the room tighten around her. The air grew heavier. The sound of the bamboo chimes outside slowed, each note drawn out. "Taken?" She repeated the word, not loudly, but with a calmness sharper than anger. "You mean I was not left behind? I was stolen?" The man nodded once, not dramatically, not to create effect, but because the truth did not require embellishment. "You were not meant to be found in that place," he said. "You were meant to disappear." The old man's hand trembled. Molly reached for him again, grounding him with her touch. His breath came slower, and she could sense his strength fading like a candle nearing its wick. The stranger looked at Molly again. "There are people," he said, "who still do not know you survived." Molly's heart stilled for a moment, as though listening. "And there are others," he continued, "who have been waiting for the day you would return, not to welcome you." His voice deepened slightly, not threatening, but honest. "To stop you." A silence followed that statement. Not empty, not dramatic, but heavy, real, alive. Molly looked at him with steady eyes. What do they fear? The man studied her, as though searching for something behind her gaze. Then he spoke, slowly, shaping the truth with care. "They fear the person your bloodline has destined you to become." The old man exhaled in a long, uneven breath. His eyes closed again, but his fingers curled weakly around Molly's hand, as if he knew something was coming, something he had hoped to delay. The stranger stepped even closer, stopping only an arm's length away from her. "You have a choice," he said, "to learn the truth of who you are, or to walk away and continue your life as the woman you built from your own strength." His voice held no force, no persuasion, only certainty that both paths carried consequences. Molly did not answer, not immediately. Her eyes lowered to the old man's hand in hers, the man who had given her everything, not through blood, but through love. Her breath moved slowly in her chest, deep, measured. She turned her gaze back to the stranger. "If I choose to know," she asked, "what will happen?" The stranger did not reply right away. Instead, he looked at her with an expression that was neither warning nor encouragement, but something in between. Something that meant the truth was not simple, not clean, not safe. Finally, he answered. "If you choose to know," he said quietly, "you will no longer be able to return to the life you had before." The words settled in the air, unbroken, unsoftened. Molly felt the world pause at that point. as though everything that had led her here had been preparing her for this single moment. The old man's breath grew fainter. The stranger waited, unmoving. The bamboo chimes whispered outside, as though the wind itself was holding its breath. And Molly stood between the life she knew and the truth that had been waiting for her since the moment she took her first breath. But the choice had not yet been made. Molly did not speak for a long moment. She let the weight of everything stand between them. The old wooden house, the frail breath of the man who raised her, the stranger who carried the truth like a shadow. Her entire life balanced in silence. She lowered herself again beside the old man. She rested her hand gently upon his chest, feeling the slow rise and fall beneath the thin blanket. His heart was still beating, but it felt distant, like a drum echoing from another room. The old man opened his eyes once more. They were tired, but they still held that familiar warmth she had known all her life. "Molly," he whispered, his voice fragile, yet steady with purpose. "No matter what you learn, no matter what the world says, remember this. You are who you choose to be." She bowed her head slightly. Her breath pulled deep into her chest, as if she was preparing herself for something vast and irreversible. The stranger watched the two of them with controlled stillness, not intruding, not softening, only waiting. Molly finally looked up. Her eyes were clear, calm, strong. "Tell me," she said. The stranger exhaled softly, as though the moment had been inevitable from the beginning. He took a step back, as if needing distance to speak the truth properly. "You were born into a family that wielded power," he said. "Not the kind that comes from wealth or status, but the kind that shapes the direction of entire lives." Molly listened intently. No flicker of fear crossed her face. She had learned long ago to hear truth without flinching. "Your mother," the stranger continued, "was a woman of strength, a leader among those who followed her. People respected her. Some feared her, and there were others who believed that removing her child would break her spirit." The old man's eyes closed tightly, as if the memory caused him pain. Molly noticed. Her fingers curled, but she remained silent. The stranger's voice grew quieter. "She believed you were gone. She believed she had lost you forever. And that loss changed everything. It shattered alliances. It drove her into conflict. It made her enemies grow bold." Molly's heart tightened, yet her breathing remained steady. She spoke slowly, choosing each word like a stone placed with care. "And she is still alive." The stranger nodded once. "Yes." The wind outside gathered strength, brushing through bamboo chimes with sound that seemed sharper than before. The air inside the house shifted, as though the world itself recognized the turning of something important. "And she does not know I live." Molly's voice held no question, only realization. "No," the stranger replied. "She does not know, but the ones who took you that night do, and they have watched for signs. The moment you returned, the moment you allowed your name to become known, the moment your success reached the ears of those who remember the past, they began to move." Molly understood, not through explanation, but through instinct. Her life was no longer simply her own. The old man's breath weakened further. His hand trembled, searching, and Molly immediately held it. He opened his eyes again, and for the first time, there was something like worry there, not for himself, for her. The stranger stepped closer. "There is something else," he said. "The night you were taken, she was not the only one who lost something." Molly's heart beat once, heavy, like a drum signaling a shift in the world. Her eyes lifted to his. "What do you mean?" The stranger's expression changed, almost imperceptibly. A tightening of the jaw, a weight settling behind the eyes, the look of someone who had held a truth that never allowed him rest. "There was another child," he said. Molly froze. Even the wind outside seemed to still. "A twin," he continued, "born beside you, taken as you were. But that child did not vanish into the same darkness. That child lived." The old man released a faint, strained sound, as if the truth itself pressed against his chest. Molly's body did not move, not a single muscle. But inside her, something shifted like a door unlocking after decades of silence. The stranger took one final step forward, his voice lowered to something nearly personal. You have a sibling, and that sibling has been searching for you. The house held the moment in absolute stillness. The old man's breath flickered like the last light of an oil lamp. Molly stood between two lives, both waiting for her to choose. But the next decision, the next step, the next truth, had not yet been spoken. Molly's mind raced, though her body remained still. A twin, another life tethered to hers in a way she had never imagined. A shadow of her own existence, living, breathing, searching while she had been growing under the care of the old man. Her fingers tightened around the frail hand of the man who had raised her. His eyes, now half lidded with age and exhaustion, followed hers with silent understanding. He did not speak. He did not need to. The weight of what had been revealed pressed on them both. The stranger moved closer, though cautiously, as if approaching a delicate artifact he feared breaking. The child survived because someone intervened, he said. Someone powerful. Someone who saw the value in keeping that life alive. Molly's heart sank. The air in the room felt charged, almost electric, with truths long buried and waiting. The child, she whispered, barely audible. Where is this person now? Where is my sibling? The stranger's eyes darkened. He looked past her, toward the window, toward the garden where sunlight now struggled to pierce through the gray clouds. They are moving through the world, silent, unknown, hidden, but closer than you think. Molly's chest tightened. Her body seemed to shrink under the weight of the realization that she had never been alone in existence. There had always been someone else. Someone who had shared her first cries, her earliest days of life, though unknowingly. The old man coughed softly, a fragile sound that broke the tension briefly. Molly glanced at him, noting how thin he had become, how every year, every struggle, had left its mark upon his body. She felt a wave of guilt rise within her, for leaving him alone for so many years. Yet now, he had lived long enough to hear this truth, to witness the threads of destiny weaving closer. The stranger finally spoke again, his tone measured. The twin you never knew, they may be the key to what comes next, but they are not yet ready to meet you. Not yet. Molly's brow furrowed, though her lips remained calm. She wanted to reach out, to demand answers, to grasp at the invisible thread connecting her to this lost life. But the stranger's words carried weight. He was not someone who lied. He did not speak lightly. Outside, the wind gathered again. The bamboo chimes rattled, a sound sharper now, almost urgent. It was as if the world itself whispered warnings that Molly could feel deep in her chest. The old man spoke, his voice weak, barely audible, yet filled with steady conviction. Molly, remember what I told you. You are who you choose to be. This revelation does not define you. You will face it, yes, but do not let it consume you. Molly nodded slowly, absorbing each word like a stone sinking in a river. She could feel the truth's weight pressing down upon her, threatening to break the surface of her calm exterior. And yet, she understood that patience was required, that timing had its own power. The stranger took a step back, his eyes lingering on her, and then glanced once more at the old man. Time is short, he said softly, almost to himself. They will come closer, but they are still watching, waiting, just like you were. Molly's gaze moved to the doorway. The light from outside fractured across the floorboards, dancing in patterns she could not name. And she felt it, the sensation of something approaching, something imminent though unseen. Her mind raced, and yet she did not act. She understood instinctively that this was a pause, a breath held between two worlds. One where she was a girl who had been saved from the trash. One where she would face the twin she had never known, the secrets that had been kept from her since birth, and the forces that had been moving in the shadows all her life. The wind shifted. The chimes rattled again, louder this time, as though calling her attention to something she could not yet see. Molly stepped closer to the old man, her hand resting lightly upon his shoulder. She felt the frailty of his body, and the urgency of the moment grew sharper. But even as she sensed that urgency, she understood this. The twin, the hidden truths, the forces watching her. They were not ready to reveal themselves. And for the first time in her life, Molly realized the patience she had cultivated for survival would be tested in ways she had never imagined. Outside, shadows moved along the edges of property. Figures she could not yet name, steps she could not yet hear, breaths she could not yet feel. And in that waiting, the world seemed to hold its breath with her. The next revelation, the next movement, the next confrontation was coming. But not yet, not yet. And the silence that followed carried the weight of everything she had lived through and everything that was about to unfold. The story held itself suspended on the edge of a secret too vast to reveal. And Molly, standing between the life she knew and the life that waited beyond the shadows, felt the first tremor of the journey she had not yet begun. Molly stayed still for a long moment, letting the quiet settle over her. The old man's breath was shallow now, yet steady, as though even the faintest flicker of life was enough to anchor the world around him. The stranger remained near the doorway, a dark silhouette against the gray light, patient and silent, like a sentinel holding the edges of some invisible truth. Her mind wandered back to her childhood, to the alley where she had been found, the cold metal scraps, the smell of rotting food and wet cloth, the way the old man had bent down gently, as though the world itself had entrusted her to him. She had survived that world, grown stronger than anyone could imagine. And yet now in this room, surrounded by shadows of the past and whispers of the future, she realized survival was no longer enough. She looked at the stranger again. His eyes seemed to hold a map of her life before she knew it existed. Paths she had never walked, voices she had never heard, a history kept secret, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal itself. "Why now?" she asked softly, her voice steady, yet carrying the weight of decades lived and years lost. "Why has it taken so long for this truth to reach me?" The stranger did not answer immediately. He stepped further into the room, careful not to disturb the frail presence on the bed. His gaze did not waver from hers. "Because the world moves in cycles," he said finally. "Some truths cannot be spoken until the time is right, until the pieces are in place, until the heart can bear the knowledge without breaking." Molly's chest tightened at his words. Her hand instinctively moved to the old man's chest again. His heartbeat was slow but insistent, a reminder that life, fragile as it was, could endure even the heaviest weight of truth. Outside, the wind shifted again. The bamboo chimes rattled with more urgency this time, the sound echoing through the house like a warning carried by invisible hands. Shadows moved along the edges of the garden, shifting with the faint light, shapes she could not yet define, movements she could not yet interpret. The stranger took another step closer. "There are forces," he said, "watching you, waiting. Not all are enemies. Some are protectors. Some are hunters. But all have been drawn to you since the moment you returned to this place." Molly swallowed hard, though her face betrayed nothing. Her mind raced with possibilities. Every thread she had followed in her life had led her here, to this room, to the edge of a truth that had been kept from her for 25 years. She looked down at the old man, noticing the subtle tremor in his hand, the way his chest rose and fell with effort. He had sacrificed everything to give her life, to give her a chance at becoming someone who could face the world with strength and purpose. And now, that life demanded more of her than she had ever been prepared for. The stranger's gaze shifted toward the window, toward the fractured light on the floorboards. "They are near," he said quietly, "closer than you can imagine. The one who shares your blood, your twin, has been moving through the same shadows that once hid you. And soon, the paths will intersect." Molly's breath caught. She felt the pulse of destiny thrum through the air, as if the very house was aware of what was coming. And yet, even as the revelation pressed against her, she understood that the final moment, the meeting, the confrontation, the answer she had been waiting for, was not yet here. The wind outside grew stronger, rattling the chimes into a rapid staccato. The room seemed smaller, more intimate, as though the walls themselves leaned in to hear the story unfolding within. Her eyes moved between the stranger and the old man, and she realized that the world she had known and the world she was about to enter were not separate. They had always been intertwined. The old man's hand trembled more noticeably now. He looked up at her, his eyes faintly pleading. "Remember, Molly," he whispered, "strength comes not from knowing everything, but from knowing when to wait." The stranger nodded, his expression unreadable, though his presence seemed to carry the weight of storms held in check. Outside, shadows moved with purpose, silent yet undeniable. Figures she could not yet see, footsteps she could not yet hear, breaths that hovered at the edges of perception. Molly stepped toward the window, peering into the garden. Her eyes searched for movement, for any sign of the hidden forces he spoke of. The gray light revealed nothing, yet the air felt thick with anticipation. Every fiber of her being told her something was coming, something that would change everything. And then she sensed it, a presence, just beyond her sight, waiting, watching, silent, not hostile, not friendly, simply inevitable. She turned back toward the old man, his frail form a reminder of what had been sacrificed for her life. She looked to the stranger, whose face remained a mask of controlled urgency. And Molly understood the moment she had been waiting for. The meeting with her twin, the confrontation with the secrets of her past, was approaching, but it was not yet here. The wind blew harder, the chimes clattering like distant echoes of a warning. Shadows shifted again, unseen, waiting. And the house, heavy with memories, held its breath. Everything hung in the balance. Everything waited for the next move. But the next move had not yet come. Not yet. And Molly, standing between the life she had known and the life that awaited, felt the suspense of destiny tighten around her, unyielding, unbroken, and absolute. Molly remained by the window, the gray light washing over her face, casting half of it in shadow. Her mind raced with possibilities, yet her body remained still, anchored by the gravity of the moment. The old man's breathing had slowed further. Each exhale was a whisper of time, fragile and fleeting, yet stubbornly present. The stranger stood closer now, but not too close. His presence was a weight, neither threatening nor comforting, but precise, as if each second he spent in the room mattered more than any action could express. He did not speak immediately, and the silence became its own language, a language that spoke of years hidden, of forces unseen, and of truths waiting to erupt. Molly's gaze drifted to the door. The entrance of the room had become a threshold, a place where the ordinary world ended and the unknown began. She felt the pull of that threshold, the sensation that crossing it, even slightly, would irrevocably change everything. Outside, the wind gathered into a low howl. The bamboo chimes rattled violently, sharp notes slicing through the tension like distant bells warning of something impending. Shadows moved in the corners of her vision, subtle, fleeting, but undeniably deliberate. The stranger finally spoke, his voice low and calm, carrying the weight of inevitability. "The one who shares your blood has sensed your return," he said. "Every step you take, every breath you exhale, draws them nearer. They have been searching for you long, before you even knew their existence." Molly's chest tightened, yet she did not move. Her eyes remained on the shadows in the room, on the place where light and dark met, waiting. "Why have they been hidden all these years?" she asked. Her voice was steady, but her mind spun with questions she did not dare speak aloud. "Because the world was not ready for your reunion," the stranger said. "Because the threads of power, influence, and survival were still being woven. And because some truths require patience beyond what most can bear." The old man stirred slightly, his hand trembling under Molly's grasp. His eyes opened just enough to meet hers, a faint spark of pride and fear intertwining in their gaze. "You have grown into someone stronger than I ever imagined," he whispered. "But strength alone will not save you from what waits." Molly pressed her palm against his chest again. His heartbeat was faint, but it was steady enough to remind her of the life she had always fought to honor. She felt the old pulse of courage rise within her, the same courage that had carried her from the alley into a life built on her own resilience. The stranger stepped closer to the window, his gaze moving outside. "The one who is searching for you, they are patient. They understand the stakes. They are as prepared as you are, and soon the paths will converge." Molly turned her gaze to him, her mind balancing the unknown with the present. "Soon?" she asked softly. "How soon?" He did not answer directly. Instead, he motioned with a subtle tilt of his head toward the garden. Shadows shifted there again, fleeting glimpses of movement, just beyond recognition. "They are coming," he said finally, "but not yet." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Molly felt a strange mixture of anticipation and restraint. Her body ached to act, to move, to seek, to know. Yet she understood the truth in his words. Some things could not be rushed. Some revelations demanded patience. The wind outside rose to a soft roar. The bamboo chimes clattered, as if echoing the tension within the room. The shadows in the garden twisted in strange patterns, almost as if alive, almost as if waiting for her to step outside and meet them. The old man's breathing grew more fragile with each passing second. Molly leaned closer, pressing her forehead lightly against his shoulder. "You have given me everything," she whispered. "Now I will hold on to it, no matter what comes." The stranger's eyes met hers once more, and Molly saw in them a quiet intensity, the knowledge of paths yet to be taken, of choices yet to be made. "There is one thing you must understand," he said, his voice steady, deliberate. "No meeting, no revelation, no confrontation happens by chance. Everything you experience, every shadow you see, every breath you take, has been leading to this. And yet, the moment you anticipate most may not arrive when you expect it." Molly's pulse quickened, though her body remained calm. She felt the tension in the room deepen, stretching time and space around her. Every sound, the faint wind, the creak of the floor, the old man's shallow breaths, the clatter of chimes, became sharper, more distinct. She stepped closer to the window, peering into the garden. The shadows remained, teasing her perception, hinting at the presence she could not yet name. Movement without form, presence without face. All of it a promise, a warning, a thread dangling just beyond reach. And in that suspended moment, Molly understood the truth she had been waiting for her entire life. The past, the present, and the future had converged. The forces she had yet to confront were closer than she knew. And the one she had been seeking, the twin, the hidden part of herself, was moving, just out of sight, toward the moment that could change everything. But that moment had not yet come. The house, heavy with history and whispered secrets, seemed to lean in toward her, waiting. The old man's breath fluttered softly, fragile yet persistent. The stranger remained poised, silent, a bridge between what was known and what was hidden. And Molly, standing on the precipice of discovery, felt the pulse of destiny tighten around her. The next truth waited, just beyond the shadows, just beyond the sound of the chimes, just beyond reach. And still it did not arrive. Not yet, yet Molly could feel it. It was coming, slowly, inevitably, and when it did, nothing would ever be the same. Molly lowered her gaze from the shadows in the garden, her thoughts spinning in silent circles. The air inside the house felt denser now, as if the walls themselves had absorbed the years of waiting, of secrets held, of breaths unspoken. She could hear her own heartbeat, a steady drum echoing in her ears, mingling with the faint creaks of the old wooden floorboards. Time itself seemed to have slowed, stretching the moment into something heavy, almost tangible. The old man shifted slightly beneath the blanket. His eyes fluttered open for a fleeting instant, catching Molly's gaze. "You are ready," he whispered, more to himself than to her. "Ready to face what I never could." Molly did not respond. She could not yet. The words were heavy, loaded with both encouragement and warning. She had been trained to survive, to adapt, to endure. But this was something different. This was not survival. This was destiny. The stranger stepped closer to the window, his figure dark against the pale gray light outside. He did not speak immediately. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, as though listening to something that no one else could hear. The wind rustled through the bamboo chimes, a soft staccato that seemed to echo the rhythm of something far beyond the house. "They are near," he said finally, his voice low and deliberate, but not yet visible. He turned his gaze to Molly. "Everything you have known, everything you have built, it has all led to this threshold, and beyond it, everything changes. Not in the way you expect, not in the way you imagine." Molly took a step closer to the old man, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. She could feel the thin pulse of his heartbeat beneath her palm. It was fragile, yet unyielding. She pressed her lips together, absorbing the weight of every lesson he had taught her, every sacrifice he had made. She had always believed her life was shaped by her choices alone, but now she understood that she had been shaped by forces she could not yet see. The stranger's gaze returned to the garden, to the fractured light on the soil, to the dark corners where shadows seemed to move with purpose. "They wait," he said quietly. "They are patient. They know the timing must be precise. And so must you." Molly's breath caught. Her mind imagined a twin, the hidden sibling she had never known, the other half of herself moving through the world in silence. What had they seen? Where had they been? What had been kept from her, and why? The old man coughed softly, breaking the tense silence. Molly turned to him, kneeling once more beside the bed. "You saved me once," she whispered. "Now, I must be ready to face what I was meant to become. I cannot fail." The old man's hand moved slightly, weak yet purposeful, touching her cheek briefly. "You will not fail," he said. "You have endured more than most could bear. You have learned patience. You have learned strength. And now, you must learn to wait for the moment that cannot be rushed." The stranger stepped closer again, closing the space between Molly and the shadows beyond the window. "There are movements you cannot yet perceive," he said. "Footsteps you cannot yet hear. Eyes that watch from places you will not see. All waiting for the exact instant when paths collide." Molly felt the weight of the words settle deep into her bones. Everything she had prepared for, her success, her return, her careful steps back to this home, had led her to this precise moment of anticipation. Yet the culmination of it all, the meeting with the twin, the revelation, the confrontation, was still just beyond reach. The wind rose outside, stronger now, whipping the bamboo chimes into a clattering frenzy. Shadows twisted and shifted in the corners of the garden, just out of clear sight, teasing, suggesting, hinting at the presence of what was to come. Molly pressed her hand to the old man's chest one last time, feeling the pulse beneath her fingers. She drew a deep breath, steadying herself for the unknown. Her eyes moved to the stranger. "I will wait," she said, "for them, for the moment, for the truth." The stranger inclined his head slightly, a silent acknowledgement. Outside, the wind roared again, stronger, urgent, carrying the sound of movement in the shadows. Molly felt it, a brush of anticipation, a stir of fate just beyond her perception. The old man's breath grew even more fragile, almost imperceptible. Molly leaned closer, whispering softly, "I will not fail you, not now, not ever." The stranger's gaze remained fixed on the garden, his lips barely moving. "They are coming closer," he said quietly. "But not yet. The timing is not yet right." The words settled like a weight in the room. Molly's mind stretched to anticipate, to imagine, to predict, and yet she could not. Everything was poised, ready, trembling on the edge of revelation. The shadows moved again outside the window. Molly's eyes tracked them, but she could not see them clearly. The wind carried whispers she could not yet understand. And then, the house itself seemed to sigh, heavy with memory, with secrets, with waiting. The pulse of destiny pressed against every wall, every floorboard, every breath. And still, the moment she longed for, the meeting, the confrontation, the truth, did not arrive. Not yet, but Molly could feel it. The twin, the hidden past, the forces circling her. They were near, just beyond the edge of perception. And when they came, nothing would ever be the same. Yet she remained patient, steady, watching, waiting, because she understood now. Some truths are never revealed too soon. Some meetings are never rushed. And the story waits with her, suspended, as if the world itself held its breath. And outside, shadows continue to shift, waiting. And inside, Molly waited too. Not yet. Molly stood silently by the window, her eyes tracing the last flickers of shadow in the garden. The wind had softened, leaving only a gentle hum through the bamboo chimes. The house, heavy with memory and time, seemed to breathe with her, as if acknowledging the long journey that had brought her here. The old man stirred beneath the blanket, his frail hand reaching for hers once more. She took it gently, holding it as if to transfer her strength across the years, across the hardships, across the love and the sacrifices that had shaped her life. "You have grown," he whispered, his voice a soft echo of the man who had once rescued a girl from the trash. "Not just in strength, but in heart. And that is what will guide you through everything yet to come." Molly pressed her forehead lightly against his shoulder. For a moment, the world outside and all its dangers seemed to fall away. There was only this room, this fragile connection, this quiet triumph of survival and love. The stranger, who had been a shadow at the doorway for so long, finally stepped forward. "There will be challenges," he said quietly, "and there will be truths that test you beyond what you imagine. But you are ready, and that is why you survived." Molly looked up at him, her eyes steady. "I do not know what the future holds," she said, "but I know who I am, and I know what I will carry with me. Everything that has been given to me, everything I have learned, and everyone who has believed in me, even when I did not believe in myself." The old man smiled faintly, a small warmth in his tired eyes. "You have become my greatest hope," he whispered. Outside, the garden was bathed in soft golden light. The shadows that had teased her vision all these years were gone, replaced by a quiet serenity. It was a sign, she realized, that some endings are not about closure. They are about balance, about understanding that life is built on choices, love, and courage, and that even when mysteries remain, the heart can carry them forward. Molly let go of the old man's hand slowly, knowing she would always carry his strength with her. She stepped toward the door and paused, glancing back at him one last time. "Thank you," she said simply, the words heavy with all the gratitude her life could hold. The stranger followed her gaze. "You will meet your other self," he said quietly. "Perhaps not today, perhaps not tomorrow, but when the time comes, you will be ready." Molly nodded, a quiet understanding settling over her. She stepped into the sunlight, feeling the warmth on her face, the wind at her back. The past, with all its shadows and silence, had led her here, and the future, with all its uncertainty and promise, stretched before her, waiting. She inhaled deeply, and for the first time in her life, Molly felt the peace of someone who had survived the impossible, and the courage to face whatever came next. The story did not end. It would continue, in the choices she would make, in the people she would meet, in the life she would build. But for now, she allowed herself a single, quiet victory, the knowledge that she had returned whole and unbroken. And as the bamboo chimes sang softly in the wind, Molly stepped forward into the sunlight, ready to embrace the life she had always been meant to live.